On the 18th of March, 1990, the city of Boston had been struck by an enormous economical and ethical attack. In the middle of the night, 13 paintings with the value of more than $500 million had seemingly vanished from one of the most valuable art museums in the United States. Along with the paintings, the thieves had also left no trace behind. To this day, the museum still hangs on the wall the empty frames of the stolen artwork, in the hope that someday they will be revealed. Where did the stolen artwork go? How did the robbers pull the biggest art robbery in modern history off? And most importantly, who were they? Located in the metropolitan city of Boston, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, established by a prominent American art collector, Isabella Stewart Gardner, was founded in 1903 with the purpose of preserving her extensive collection of art, which includes works by Rembrandt, Michelangelo, and Botticelli. In 1982, the FBI uncovered a plan, portrayed by some Boston criminals, to attempt to carry out a heist at the museum. The investigators ultimately incarcerated the robbers, preventing a possible heist. Following this failed robbery attempt, the museum installed 60 infrared motion detectors and a closed-circuit television system consisting of 4 cameras installed outside of the museum complex, guarding the entrances. However, due to economic problems started years back, they couldn't afford to install CCTVs also inside the complex. In case something had to be going wrong during the shifts, the only way to alert the police was by pressing the only red button in the complex, located under the security desk. At approximately 12:30 a.m., a couple walking down Palace Road, adjacent to the museum, noticed a car parked close to a sidewalk, with its lights still on. As the couple approached the driver's side window, they noticed a Boston police distinctive on the shoulder of the individuals, but the faces were too poorly lit to be seen. The couple continued walking down the street without suspecting anything. For the night shift, the museum expected to have 2 security guards on duty, which that night were the 23-year-old Rick Abath and the 25-year-old Randy Heston, his first night shift in the museum. By the museum policy, one guard had to patrol the complex, while the other one had to stay at the front desk, surveilling the outside installed cameras through a monitor. Abath was the first guard to patrol the museum, with nothing indicating anything out of the ordinary. Suddenly, fire alarms started going off in several rooms, but he wasn't able to locate the origin of the fire. He immediately rushed to the security room and turned off the fire alarms indicators in the control panel. He then continued his patrol, and without telling his partner, sat at the desk. He opened the side entrance door and closed it shortly after. At 1 a.m., Abath returned to the front desk, and Heston started his patrol. At 1:20 a.m., the side door buzzer rang, startling Abath. The 2 sides were connected by an intercom and a CCTV system, through which Abath could see that the people who rang the bell were dressed as policemen. The 2 men reported that they needed to enter the complex to investigate a case of disturbance, which initially aroused Abath, since he didn't notice anyone disturbing the area. He eventually buzzed the policemen in, breaking the protocol at 1:24 a.m. The 2 individuals reached the front desk, confronting Abath, sat right in front of him, asking him if there were any more security guards inside the complex, and to bring them to the front desk. Abath called Heston with his walkie-talkie. The shorter man told Abath that he looked familiar and he was possibly accounted for a crime, ordered him to stand up and face the wall in front of him. The policeman suddenly handcuffed him, and as soon as Heston returned to the front desk, the other policeman handcuffed him as well. Heston asked the reason for the arrest, to which a policeman responded, "Gentlemen, this is a robbery." Once handcuffed and brought in the museum basement, separating them from the police button, the thieves commenced their plan. At 1:48, 13 minutes after leaving the basement, the thieves climb up 2 floors via the main staircase. The first room scouted by them was the Dutch room. While they were approaching their first prey, the storm on the Sea of Galilee, a beeping alarm went off, which would sound every time someone would get too close to a painting. It was smashed into pieces by the thieves. A lady and gentleman in black was their second prey, smashing it onto the ground and removing the frame around it. They tried taking a self-portrait by Rembrandt, but left it leaning into a wall, too big to be transported by hand. 3 minutes have passed since they first entered the Dutch room. While one thief was operating there, the other made its way into the short gallery room on the opposite end of the second floor. The first thief took 2 more paintings in the Dutch room, along with a Chinese goo, before joining his partner into the short gallery, where they took 5 sketches by Degas. At 1:56, the Dutch room infrared sensor went off twice, indicating that now both of the robbers returned back into that room. And 12 minutes later, at 2:08, movement sensors went off again in the early Italian room, Raphael room, finally in the short gallery. One robber is back there. For nearly 30 minutes, no movement sensor or painting proximity alarm went off in any of the museum rooms. What the thieves were doing is unknown. They then headed down towards the security room, where they removed the VHS tapes of the CCTV cameras recording that night, along with the prints of the motion detector data. However, the hard drive containing the movement data remained untouched. Only at 2:41, the side entrance outside door opens and closes, and one more time at 2:45. The first robber, then the other, left the complex and loaded the artwork on their car in the span of 4 minutes, vanishing into the darkness. The robbery lasted a total of 81 minutes. 13 works were stolen, by the value of more than $600 million, and a $10 million ransom offered by the FBI for whoever had any information leading to who were the robbers or where the stolen paintings were. However, no trace of the thieves nor the artwork was ever found. Thanks to the visual cues given by the 2 guards on patrol that night, these were the uncanny sketches created by the Boston police. Both men were presumably in their 30s, dressed, as we know, as fake police officers, and possibly with fake mustaches, as stated by one of the guards. One shorter and skinnier, the other taller, with a stockier physique. The first aspect of the investigation was the security guard Abath, guitarist in a local band, and confessed that he usually showed up for his night shift, drunk, and not always completely vigilant. So why was he the first suspect? His suspicious behavior the night of the robbery aroused suspicions among the investigators. The opening and closing of the side door without any apparent reason is slightly suspicious. He stated that he had done that in almost all of his shifts, but the investigators never encountered this behavior before, after reviewing previous CCTV tapes. So why did he do that? Probably to communicate with the thieves, who were in their car, parked just outside the complex. Investigators also found the frame of the painting Chest Tortoni by Manet, leaning on a chair in the security room, indicating that the robbers presumably removed the painting from the blue room where it was hanging on the first floor. But what is truly strange is that no motion detector went off during that night in the blue room. Apart from approximately 30 minutes before the thieves entered the complex, when Abath was patrolling the museum, passing through the blue room, triggering the motion detector sensor. And it's not a sensor fault, since they were tested shortly after the heist, and they were in perfect working order. This would lead Abath to a possible suspect. He could have possibly removed the painting from the wall while patrolling the museum to facilitate the work of the robbers for a potential money reward. In 2015, the FBI released this CCTV video showing a vehicle which seemed to match the description of the actual car used by the robbers during the heist, parking close to one of the museum entrances. An unidentified man exited the vehicle, got buzzed in by Abath, exchanging a conversation at the front desk. Finally, taking off in his car. This encounter happened at 12:49 a.m. on March 17, 1990, 24 hours before the heist took place. The Gardner Museum policy prohibited the guards to let anyone in during the night, not even the police. Not only what Abath did was illegal, he denied having had this encounter in the first place. We really have no way of knowing who this man was, what he was doing there, or why Abath let him in. But we can't deny that this encounter is somewhat suspicious. Four years later, the director of the museum, Anna Hawley, received an ambiguous letter from an anonymous writer, very different from the ones received by her during the previous years. I want to point out that I had no part in the theft, and really only became aware of it in the past 6 months. The writer further stated that the robbery was portrayed in order to pay for her prison sentence, but since the deadline for payment had expired, there was no reason to keep the artwork, which was kept in a, quote, controlled environment. So, they stated that the artwork was in good condition. They could facilitate the exchange if they received $2.6 million in return, and had to be reassured that there was no risk whatsoever of an attempted arrest from the FBI during the negotiation phase. To be reassured that the writer and the FBI were on the same page, the writer demanded that a coded message had to appear in the Boston Globe, a number either 0 or 1, written in the currency box. 1 if the museum was interested in the return of the artwork, 0 if they weren't. And just like that, the number 1 appeared in the Boston Globe. The coded message was acknowledged by the writer in a second letter sent to Hawley, in which the unknown individual, however, expressed their concern about the museum intentions, and asked the writer to please return the artwork. The writer then sent the coded message back to Hawley, in which the unknown individual, however, expressed their concern about the museum intentions, and asked the writer to please return the artwork. about not only wanting to have the artwork returned, but also discovering the identity of the robbers. "You cannot have both," shouted the writer. The unknown individual ultimately stated that they needed time to evaluate the options and the possible risk by giving the paintings back to the museum. No letter was received by the unknown writer ever since. Members of the Merlino gang, including Robert Guarente and Robert Gentile, were initially linked by the FBI to the stolen artwork from the Gardner Museum. Guarente died from cancer in 2004, but his widow claimed that he had owned some of the paintings which he gave to Gentile for safekeeping before his death. Gentile, however, denied any involvement even after being subjected to a lie detector test, which presumably proved him guilty. Federal authorities tried to pressure Gentile for information during the following years by indicting him on drug charges, but he still did not provide any information regarding the heist or the location of the artwork. The FBI ultimately searched Gentile's property with a search warrant and found a secret ditch below a fake floor, but it was found empty. They also found a copy of a newspaper article dated 1990 reporting in the front page the theft at the Gardner Museum, along with a list of the estimated black market values for the stolen art. Despite finding these clues, no conclusive evidence linking Gentile nor Guarente to the theft was found. Gentile served 30 months in prison on drug charges, not ever speaking about his possible involvement in the robbery ever since. During the late 1990s, Boston suburbs criminal and antiques dealer William Youngworth became a primary suspect in the Gardner Museum theft. FBI investigators believed he had worked closely with criminals Bobby Donati, killed in a gang war, and David Hutton. These two high-profile criminals were thought to be the primary heads behind the robbery, hiring then a low-level criminal to portray the heist. In 1997, Youngworth claimed to Boston Herald's journalist Tom Marshberg that he could return the Gardner paintings as long as his identity would remain hidden if the journalist ever had to write about this encounter in a newspaper. Youngworth drove Marshberg to a storage unit located in Brooklyn. Inside this building there were several cylinders, which appeared to be rolled paper. Youngworth unrolled one of them and showed it to Marshberg. To his disbelief, it was the storm on the Sea of Galilee, stolen from the Gardner Museum Dutch room, with signs of cuts and crackings along the edges, which were seemingly positioned in the same way as reported in the FBI report. Marshberg wrote about this encounter in the Boston Herald, leaving out any details as of where the warehouse was or who conducted him there. The FBI ultimately discovered the location of the warehouse and searched it, only to discover that there were no traces of any of the stolen artwork, despite what had been reported by Marshberg. The FBI had also concluded that the paintings seen by the journalist during the visit at the warehouse were unlikely the ones stolen by the thieves. The original paintings were covered by a type of varnish, which would not make the paintings roll that easily, like the ones seen from Marshberg. Also, the description of the paint chips given by Marshberg on the storm on the Sea of Galilee were likely to be from the Rembrandt era, but did not match the actual ones used in the original painting. For more than 15 years, we had no more public updates from either the Gardner Museum directors nor the FBI about the state of the investigation. It wasn't until 2013 that the FBI released a public statement regarding some important news about the possible identity of the robbers and the location of the artwork. With a high degree of confidence, the investigators believe the members could have been selected by a criminal organization based in the Mid-Atlantic, as well as with the same confidence that the paintings were firstly transported either to Connecticut or Philadelphia and attempted to be sold in 2002. If you were to believe the whole concept of Abath being part of the robbers, you would have good reasons. He broke the protocol for 2 nights in a row by letting unauthorized people in the complex. Chester Tony was hanging in the Blue Room, but by the motion detector data, the robbers never entered there. The only one who did was Abath, half an hour before the robbers entered the complex. But even after numerous interrogations, the FBI hasn't been able to get any information from Abath, useful to trace the heads behind the heist. And also, regarding potential criminal organizations, the investigators haven't really been able to link anyone to this robbery. Or at least they haven't made it public. Numerous suspects, but no guilty. After 33 years, countless investigations, the stolen artwork's empty frames are still waiting to be revealed.